Let's head now to the United Kingdom and news of that massive fine dished out today to Glencore. The Southwark Crown Court determined that Glencore Energy UK should pay penalties of over £280 million. That's around 5.7 billion rand. Let me correct myself. That's a huge amount in connection with their dealings in parts of Africa. The global mining giant had already admitted to 5 counts of bribery, 2 counts of failure to prevent bribery under the UK Bribery Act. Well, I'm joined now by our London correspondent, Olly Barratt. Olly, good evening to you. I mean, the stories are astonishing. Money, cash being ferried around in private jets. I mean, it's just mind-boggling. But the fine is massive. Break down, though, first for us what Glencore has actually admitted to doing and in which parts of Africa.
Yes, Sally, over a number of years in the 2000s in Nigeria, Cameroon, Ivory Coast, Equatorial Guinea and South Sudan, members of staff who were described as intermediaries but effectively worked for Glencore, put out bribes and were involved in corruption worth $27 million or so. Some of this was fairly extraordinary in terms not just of the sums of money involved, but the way and the brazen way that this was being carried out. There's an example from 2011 of a private jet flying into Juba in South Sudan not long after that country became independent, with around $800,000 in cash on board. That money very quickly got to local officials and eased Glencore's moves into the market when it came to oil supplies, and really gave it an advantage. Lawyers in the case that this was all authorised at a senior level, and that's what's led to this huge fine today, £280 million in total, as you say. That is £182.9 million in terms of fines, but the rest of it is made up of £93 million in what's described as recompense for the criminal spoils, £4.6 million in legal costs as well, and all of that comes on top of $1.1 billion that Glencore has already had to pay to American authorities over separate but related criminal bribery and corruption activity in Africa.
We always see when these big companies are caught out that they seem to go forward on the front foot and say, look, we've done this and we are cleaning it up and we are going to change our ways, and there were a few rogue elements. But do you think that this is going to damage Glencore's reputation irretrievably?
It absolutely is damaging for the reputation of Glencore, and we've seen exactly what you are setting out there in terms of the company trying now to manage its reputation going forward by looking back and saying none of this is happening anymore and we are sorry for it. But let's also hear from what the judge said in handing down this fine today. He said it was fraudulent activity that was endemic within the West Africa operation at Glencore. He talked about a culture in which bribery was accepted as a way of doing business. He says that the activities that Glencore carried out caused substantial harm to competitors. And let's go next to what the company is saying. Kalidas Madhavpedi, the Glencore chairman, new Glencore chairman, says the conduct that took place was inexcusable and has no place in Glencore. He says the company is committed to operating a company that creates value for all stakeholders, operating transparently under a well-defined set of values with openness and integrity at the forefront. The fine is something that Glencore can absolutely afford, as vast as it is. But as you say, the key going forward for the company is going to be whether it can recover reputationally.
Is it, and what's been the wider reaction? As you say, that I think they even factored this fine into their balance sheet. But is it being seen as quite a watershed moment that's going to send a signal to other multinationals? And we saw what happened with Bain here in South Africa, that they took a real knock for their involvement in state capture. Is this what's happening to Glencore? And I know that there are further investigations. Is it going to send a broader message, do you think?
That's certainly the hope of the Serious Fraud Office here in the UK. It is the first prosecution of this kind for the SFO, and they therefore see it as a huge victory to have got to this point, and they also therefore see it as a message to go out to the wider industry, but other industries as well that are involved in or have been involved in this kind of activity. And another reason that it sets a potential mark in the sand in terms of where we might go next is that there were a number of individuals in this particular case that were not named in these legal proceedings, and the reason for that is that the SFO is considering now whether it can actually go after individuals with criminal charges, whether it can hold staff members at Glencore and its subsidiaries directly responsible, criminally responsible themselves for some of the activities that have taken place. And that will be key as well in terms of where we go from here. Can the UK authorities and American authorities as well now not just go for companies over activities like this, but also go for some of the executives and the staff members that are involved in these kinds of practices, and make it clear to individuals in the wider industry that this is the kind of activity that is going to lead to prosecutions of individuals. That, I think, the SFO believes is going to be critical in terms of the message, as you say, that is now being sent out.
Staying with business news coming out of London, news of another interest rate hike. I think it's, what is it, your 8th in less than a year? It still seems pretty low by South African standards. I mean, we're used to hitting almost up to 10 and that sort of thing. But what kind of impact, first of all, tell us what the rate is and the kind of impact it's going to have on an already really strained economy.
Yeah, rates going up, the key interest rate going up today, Sally, from 2.25% to 3%, so 0.75 percentage points. That is the biggest individual hike that we've seen from the central bank here in the UK for 30 years. So it is significant in the scale of the move, and it will mean for many individual households, it will mean more money on their mortgage payments every single month. It'll mean more money on their credit card interest payments every single month as well. And so we are getting into territory, given the amount of years we've had with incredibly low interest rates in this country because of the financial crisis of 2008, a territory where a lot of homeowners and business owners and individuals with any kind of debt are really starting to feel that now in terms of what they're having to pay back month by month. There is some good news coming from the Bank of England today for those people, though, and that is that the Bank of England is saying that now it feels actually interest rates in this country will probably peak around 4.5% towards the end of next year. Now, that will involve some further pain for those people who do have debt in this country, but crucially, markets had been pricing in a jump to around 6% or even more towards the end of next year. And if you have a hefty mortgage, I should say, in this country, that's going to mean that would have meant hundreds and hundreds of pounds more per month just on your mortgage payments, and that was threatening household finances in a significant way. So the Bank of England is saying things might not be as bad for households as were initially feared, but on the other side of that coin, they're also saying they believe the UK is in a recession. They believe that the UK will now go into the longest recession perhaps on record, stretching out over the next 2 years potentially. They say it might not be the deepest recession on record, but they do say that it will be long, and they expect that unemployment will jump from where it is now at around 3% up to around 6.5%. So it is pretty much doom and gloom that we're getting from the Bank of England today as they hike interest rates to try and get on top of inflation, which they hope will peak towards the end of this year, but it's already up at around 10%, so really difficult for households in this country like it is for countries all over the planet.